Welcome to the Moxie Press podcast. Today you're going to hear a conversation with me, Jesse, and our author spotlight for the month of August, Elliot Grey. They wrote a pretty fascinating collection of poems and short stories called the Clusterfuck Collection because, as they put it, that's exactly what it is, a mishmash of all the things that make them them. It's a pretty great talk, pretty fascinating. Everything from their previous life as a first responder, how they got into writing, what they're doing now, what's coming up. So please get into it. Before we do, one quick correction in the episode. Elliot does say that the book is coming out August 5th. It has been pushed back. Not a big deal. Only 8 days to August 13th. Still, no reason not to go onto Barnes & Noble, where it is currently available for pre-order, and pre-order it, which you should. You'll see why when you listen. By the way, Author Spotlight, submit. You'll find the link in our socials, or you can DM us, message us directly. Go to moxiepress.biz to find the link to submit there. You can also go ahead and email us, moxie@moxiepress.biz. There's no reason why we'd ever hide that. Submit your work. You could be on this podcast. We'll feature you in our newsletter so a lot of people can read it. And it's a good time, and there's no reason not to. We don't charge for submissions. We don't do anything like that. It is a service we offer indie writers who are unpublished or self-published. Just submit your work, and we can go from there. All right. But until you do, please enjoy this talk with Elliot Grey.
I am a house. I've always held this idea to be true, but the way to bring meaning to this assumed absurdity has not been clear until now. Someone I thought I was close with recently asked me a question to the tune of, "How can you have worked your job before if you have all these problems?" Their tone was not one of concern, it was disgust. Or was it disappointment? Judging by the intonation, it was probably both. The statement of discontent made me angry, not for the reasons you would think. I was mad at the image in my head and the inability to put into words how such a thing could be true. I was stuck, and once again feeling delicate because of the sudden realization that I was no longer in a safe place. For transparency's sake, due to a series of unfortunate events, I am disabled. This person was referring to my depression, anxiety, PTSD, and ADHD. All of these things have finally reached a point where they can no longer lay dormant. I cannot partake in serving my community in the ways I had done before. I cannot socialize like I used to. My quirky and unique traits have now become cumbersome and redundant. My life has changed. I am unbothered by this in the overall sense because I am now privileged enough to have the resources to manage myself better. I know I owe no one an explanation. Not a single person has the need to know access to my inner self. But for me and others like me, let me explain. The warm, light scent of pine, the creak with each step as you walk into the kitchen with the vastly lower ceiling. Hot coals from the fire are your main source of light in the wee hours of the morning. Multi-paned windows, heavy wood doors, gallant gables. Old houses were easy, simple materials, simple features, simple purpose. There was not much to them, romantic in theory, and they were built to last. Foundations were strong despite the lack of technology. There are some older homes with an age of a few hundred years that are still standing. I am not that kind of home. I am a modern home. One built with the same urgency and complacency as a cisgendered, middle-aged white Karen who has to take to the complaint department every time they are inconvenienced. My foundation was cheap, lazy, quick, and easy. It is not sound. Poor decisions were made and the contractors left the job in the beginning stages. I was left to figure out the rest, and I don't know a damn thing about power tools, or electrical, or plumbing. My walls were made with 2x4s, particle board, and filled with subpar insulation. The foundation was built with the assumption that routine maintenance would be available. Routine maintenance was not available. It took years to find a contractor who was willing to create a whole new home with the dilapidated scraps of what used to be. The wind blew too hard one too many times. The paint began to chip. Everything leaked, including the pipes. The attic was home to squatters and critters who were both rabid. Even a walk around the perimeter proved that I never truly lived in my home. I was a perpetual guest in my own space. The time has come for a control burn. Before the burn can happen, the house has to be disassembled to a degree. The copper wiring can be picked apart and sold for money. The windows and mirrors should be removed to prevent the possibility of projectiles. Delicately inspect each element until the house is brought down to the bare bones. The point of the control burn is exactly that, control. Leaving any hazards behind could lead to an explosion, or perhaps an even more troublesome conclusion. This book serves two purposes. One, to allow myself the ability to slowly gather the last of my tools and begin pouring a new foundation with my construction team. Two, to let others know that they are not alone. You are valid, and every home is different, and it's okay to remodel or rebuild to fit your needs. Stay safe, drink water, and eat a snack.
That was the prelude to the Clusterfuck Collection by Elliot Grey. Elliot, he is an artist and author who lives in Massachusetts. They have always been into the arts, but didn't start turning their work into truly tangible items until the pandemic. These times turned out to be formative for both his identity and creative expression. After obtaining their masters, Elliot found he loved his job as a first responder, but the work did not show him the same admiration. The humbling reality of full disability was a blessing in disguise and allowed Elliot to begin an intense journey of self-care. They now spend their life creating content in various forms for people like them in hopes to foster an environment of solidarity and validity. They also are a pet parent to Delilah, cat, age 12-ish, and Jenny, dog, age 2, who's sitting right next to you.
Yes.
Yes, I love. So we are also parents, but before we were parents, we were pet parents, and we like to say that our dog is our firstborn.
Yes.
He's 12, or not 12. He's 9. So you have an aging cat as well. Have you always had your cat?
I've had Delilah for about 12-ish years. When I rescued her, she was a kitten, but they didn't know because it was her brother, and one other cat. And actually, my brother has her brother. So we were able to kind of like keep the family together for a little while. And so, yeah, she's an old lady,
nice.
and she's a spring chicken, and they're BFFs.
Oh, so cute. I'm so glad that Jenny got to join us as well.
She would not let me do anything else.
Yeah, no.
I get
has to be in
I
this.
get it.
It's great. Yeah, no, we wish that our dog was friendly with cats. He does not. He doesn't really like anybody. But he's kind of his own.
He is more of a cat.
He is more of a cat. I think he's a cat at heart. But yeah, I the first thing we want to ask really is kind of about you and your journey as a writer. Like, was that something that was since you were little, or was that something that kind of grew over time? Especially, during the pandemic, like you said, sort of everything kicked off.
Yeah, I have always wanted to write a book. It's always been on my bucket list. But I've also always been involved in the arts. So I've been performing since before I was born, which sounds impossible, but my mom was in a chorus line with me when she was pregnant. And so I started off doing like lots of theater. I even got time off of high school to go do like professional shows. But that side of me, like, as soon as high school was over, very quickly went away, and I didn't really have another creative outlet. And so I've been exploring different ways. And so during the pandemic, I really fell in love with stippling work because it like consumed a lot of my time. And then when I was finishing up my master's, I was like, oh, I also like writing. And I haven't written something that wasn't scholarly or read something that wasn't scholarly in ages. And so when I was done, my advisor was like, you really should write a book, because also at the time that I was graduating was really terrible and chaotic, and both him and my therapist said that I should write a book, and I was like, two different people said it, and it's on my bucket list, and I shouldn't wait until I'm dead to cross things off my bucket list. So
Fair. Who was your mom in a chorus line? We're both theater nerds, so we're gonna go.
I literally don't remember. I wish I could remember the name, but she was in a chorus line, and yeah, that's all I know.
Still pretty impressive.
Yes, that's so funny. We found that. So I have a degree in musical theater. Very
Yay.
yes, a really good degree to have. But it's so funny. Like we're finding, like we just recorded another podcast yesterday. We're finding that so many people that have become writers are coming from a very artistic, performative background. So that's just interesting.
I think that's really cool. Good, because I think all that stuff feeds into each other and only makes your writing better.
Oh no, oh no, oh no. The internet kicked out for a second, but you're still there, right?
We're still there.
Okay, good.
It's the joys of remote podcasting. Comes with it. Guess the first thing really is going back to your excerpt and ultimately your book. When you describe yourself as a modern home with a poorly built foundation, how was that process of rebuilding yourself? How's that influenced your just not only artistic expression overall, but like the themes in your writing and how this book came together?
So like tea, I guess, exclusive. The first thing that you read besides the excerpt is the song that I wrote to propose to my ex to, and it turned out being a horrible like thing that happened, and we're not together anymore. So kind of as a giant like fu, but beginning to that healing process, I put that as the first excerpt, and then from there, in the moment, like let's say, like my mom was very sick, my dad was very sick, my grandmother it wasn't having a great time. Like the last year has been pretty crazy. And so I at first in the book was just writing about like those things to try to begin the process of healing, because I originally, like right now I'm doing good, but sometimes when the neurodivergence kicks in and I'm like nonverbal, like I don't even know what to talk about in therapy. So yeah, the beginning of the book starts off with things like that, but then the end, it's called the Clusterfuck Collection because it's literally all over the place. But I guess you can kind of see a theme that like towards the end, I started to write about things that were a little more expressive and not like based in fact, because some of the things are fiction and some of the things are nonfiction. And like there's one short story in there too that was based off of a like true interaction I had with a patient, which was like really terrifying and also the source of my nightmares. So when I had a night terror about it, I would also just like that would be the next thing that I write about. In also hopes that like write it down like out of sight, out of mind, and then try to move on to the next thing. So at the beginning, that's how I started to use the book to help me with that process. I hope that answers your question.
Oh no, 100%,
absolutely,
yeah.
So I'm feeling that like you view writing as a form of like catharsism.
Yes, very
Is
much
that
so.
true? Yeah.
My therapist got me into journaling, and
Okay.
that obviously is like more serious and kind of like geared towards specifically things we are working on in therapy. But yeah, it's very cathartic for me in general.
I mean, it helps to have that, especially like you said before, when you have those times when you're nonverbal, you know what to talk about, but obviously your prose, like everyone listening and watching heard it. You've sent us a couple other excerpts that were beautiful. Like there is, like it comes out in a great way. So I'm happy that you have that as the outlet.
Yeah.
Talking about one thing that stood out. Well, there's a few things, but one passage, one bit from the prelude that stood out was the idea of the necessity of a controlled burn, which I'm like, that is some great and harsh imagery. So how do you sort of navigate the delicate balance between destruction and creation in your personal and artistic life?
Let's see. Before I started really getting back into writing and really getting into like the stippling artwork, I couldn't do anything Like, I couldn't live in my house per se, and I was really stuck, and I was like, I know that I needed to do something. And I that analogy, because at first I was a firefighter and an EMT and then changed towards the end of my career, but like I saw a lot of beauty that can come from like, yes, this horrible fire just happened, but then like this family can now rebuild, or this family, like if they didn't have this fire at this house, then like they wouldn't have realized that there was this other structural issue and it actually saved them and stuff like that. So I saw the beauty in like that and translated it to myself, and like starting setting boundaries was the beginning of the fire, and like only including people in my life and doing things in my life that didn't drain my battery was kind of like adding water as it burns. And now things are smoldering, and I'm kind of like trying to pick up the pieces, because now I have the tools, but just kind of like using them to clean up, I guess, is where I'm at.
Even your answer is poetic. I
was
love
literally just thinking.
Thank you.
You pulled off using smoldering in a sentence. I could never do that.
So given like your journey and the themes in the book, what advice would you give to others that are struggling to find their footing and have, you know, similar like mental health concerns and like identity challenges?
I have found so far that my biggest, like, I guess the water hose in all of this is solidarity. It has been a huge pillar in my success. And like, I went my whole career doing things that I did because I didn't want other people to suffer. But that is also very ignorant, because it's going to happen regardless. And so, like, finding people who have the same type of problems, or even used to have the same type of problems, you can like borrow from their toolbox and vice versa. So maybe you're not a complete house, but then if you join forces, you can live as a family in this house. Um, Something like my TikTok is huge. My TikTok like took off over a stupid video of me holding my own hands and pretending that I had somebody, because I was really upset about the fact that like the way that I love looks differently because I'm neurodivergent and because of what I've done. And so like I don't know. Whatever avenue you find comfort and solidarity in, also I know it's easier said than done, but don't try not to let shame be a part of that. Like, I'm older and I use TikTok all the time, all day, every day, but it is the biggest source of community and solidarity for me.
I mean, even within our business, we've seen that with TikTok. I mean, we've found you through TikTok. We found pretty much everybody that we've, that's been our biggest thing too. I think it's a great channel, and hopefully it doesn't actually go away.
I know. And we are also older. the elder millennials.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not old. I'm just older. I have a ton of
Yes.
siblings
That's right.
and stuff that are like 21 and 19. I'm definitely older than them.
Oh. I'm the opposite. My brother is
He's turned 55.
55.
He's not going to listen to
Yep.
this. He's not going to mind
No.
if we say it out loud.
But yeah, so tangent. My dad is
well, he's an octogenarian, but what was his generation?
What's the generation before the boomers?
The forgotten generation?
The forgotten generation.
Yes. Like
and then my mom
one?
is a boomer. Silent generation. Then my mom's a boomer. My brother is Gen X. I'm a millennial.
Yeah.
So
I have a far younger brother, I guess would be Gen Z.
Gen Z, yeah.
Jeez, that's weird. We span a whole bunch of generations.
Yes, but that's something that I do love about TikTok, though, that like we have followers and people that are, the Gen X. I think that's probably maybe a boomer might be in there.
Maybe. But a lot
like
of Gen X,
and then a lot of millennials. I think the majority of our people are millennials,
Yeah.
but we have a lot of Gen Z as well.
I know. It makes me feel cool.
Yeah. I love a good platform that'll bring people together. That's what we need.
Can you tell us, because you said this book will be coming out soon,
Oh,
Yes.
a little bit about your publishing journey? I feel like it's a different set of challenges for everybody who's trying to do this on their own, especially for indie authors.
I don't know why, but I just like have this aversion to the Amazon platform, and I know that I really wanted to publish myself, because my uncle, through my stepmom, is also an author, but he like went through traditional formal peoples, and his was like a biography of sorts, and it just was a long, arduous process, and I was like, I'm not up for that either. Um, Being able to like have almost complete creative control was my goal. And so like I'm going through Barnes and Noble. And I think like it's already been approved. They liked the formatting, everything was great. I think the only thank you for the kisses. I think the only thing that was like a pain in the butt was the formatting. Like it had to be a specific type of PDF, and if it didn't match, like that literally took me a day and a half worth of like really putting the pieces together. When the solution was really simple, I just had to do all the wrong things first.
yeah.
That's how it goes. When I did the same thing with my first book, and I went through Barnes and Noble as part of it, and yeah, I didn't realize how many intricate things were like part of just like formatting the manuscript or for print and everything. It was just, it's wild. So good for you. Were there any I guess other you said, well, I mean, I guess you said that your uncle kind of had all those things. You kind of get to witness why it was so difficult. Do you have any advice you would give to any indie authors trying to do this on their own and make their way?
Do your research. Make sure that if you are like in terms of publishing, make sure that you are confident in who you're using. And then also, like, you guys are awesome and a super reliable source, but there are tons of people out there who are not so nice and awesome. So when people invite you to do things or offer things, don't be afraid to say no until you are 100% like, feel it in your bones, feel the right vibe, and it feels okay. Also, I was pretty confident in everything that I had going, but when I was doing my final edits, I made myself read out loud, and like I noticed the tiniest little mistakes that I wouldn't have noticed otherwise. So before you hit submit, make sure you read your entry at least once, if not twice, out loud, and then make the corrections as you're reading so you don't forget.
Yeah, that's a huge
I love
one.
that one.
Yeah.
That one's a big one.
Because you mentioned that one of your aims is to create content for, your community and, like you said, like foster that solidarity. Um, have you gotten any like surprising or fulfilling feedback? Like, have people read your work and like told you what? Is it still a surprise that they not really gotten to look at it? Like, what has that been like?
There is one actually. Maybe I can pull it up right now. There's one smaller. Oh no, I can't. I turned my phone off so nobody would bother me. There's one smaller excerpt that's called 2139 or 2149, and it is a very quick piece about how a patient died, and it talks about how like a mountain of bloody foam erupted from their mouth as the chains rattled below and the sirens were blaring, some variation of that. And people were like very moved by that piece, and they thought that it was super awesome. Unrelated to your question, but also kind of related, I think, is I titled the short stories because if people were interested in them, maybe I could turn them into bigger stories later on. So I wanted them to be a little more identifiable. but the overall theme throughout is non-gendered language. There's no he's, no she's. The only, like, the Karen, I feel like Karens can be unanimous. Anybody can be a Karen. And then I
That's very
use
true.
mother and father a couple of times, but I also tried to make this as interactive and personalizable as possible. So, like, the poems don't have titles, so people can kind of make that their own. But then, hopefully, throughout the reading, they can use this imagery for themselves or other people if they want to, like, say, here's an example of how I feel sometimes. It's in words. And then, yeah, I have one more, going off on a tangent, one more poem I made as an interactive piece, and there's a QR code, but also like a place to go. You scan that and you play the video while you're reading, and it might look like there is a pattern. It might look very simple, but as you read, you notice there's like a space here and a letter change there. And it's an exercise in empathy for people who are neurodivergent and have trouble, like, being overstimulated and not being able to vocalize that. So it's only 24 seconds, but it's an exercise in, like, empathy and, I guess, solidarity for the people who need it. So those are cool things that I don't think I've told you guys about, but should be known.
No, that's really awesome. I will have to check that out
Yeah.
because I experience overstimulation, like crippling overstimulation, and that sounds so interesting to me. And then in regards to the personalization, I was, before we started, I was talking to Andrew about this, that the concept in your prelude of the building of the house and like the different types of homes, like we have we have different stories like everybody does, and I resonated with that. And I just loved that your writing could be viewed very specifically as, you're writing as you, but I related to it so much as well. And I loved that. And I thought that was beautiful.
Well, I have goosebumps, so thank
It's a
you.
very Yeah, no, it's hard to balance that level of like how much is me and how much can people
Mm-hmm.
project onto it in
Mm-hmm.
a way that they can identify with. So it's very skillful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, oh, I thought you had something.
No.
Sorry.
Our awkwardness is coming out.
I know.
No, it's totally okay. I'm also so used to, like, not having, I'm so used to traditional job interviews where, like, you're supposed to ask questions back and forth, but, like, for once this is a me thing, so I'm also sitting here like, how much is too much me stuff?
No,
No,
never
no,
too
this
much
is
you.
all about
All
you.
about you.
Please, 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 please. No one wants to hear us talk all the time.
No.
Trust me. I guess the only other thing that came to mind when not only reading but hearing you read the excerpt, um, the person you mentioned, and you can tell us not to spoil it. Maybe it happened, or maybe something
Mhm.
comes up in your book that you want to talk about. But was that something you were able to repair? Was that something that like you were able to come back to, or was that like a clear like violation of trust type thing that go away?
Gotcha. No, that was also kind of like a catalyst for the book in the sense that, like,
Mhm.
I think that they would have been a little more curious and less sure with their statements if they had a better idea of, like, where I'm at. Um,
Mm.
but because of their age, they come from a time where things are different, but I've also seen it, like, age isn't an excuse. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like, that relationship very much still exists. I view it a little bit differently, but it's also someone in my life who there's probably limited time, and so it's not worth being angry that with them. And so, like, a more educated, like, viewpoint is what I can offer, and if they can take from that what they will. Um because again, like, there's certain people in my life that I know that, like, they're trying and they also might not have the tools to build their own house correctly, and so a lot of the time, as long as the intention is good, then like I'm okay with working from there.
Mm.
Yeah, the reason why I also bring it up is I think it's important for people to understand that, you know, they might not fully grasp what someone else is going through. And it's important that people realize, like, just because you're not going through the same thing, just because you have an experience, that doesn't make it any less valid. I think people don't stop and think
Yeah.
that, like, just because they didn't give validity to the problems you were having, like, you know, that it wasn't real or something like that. I mean, I'm not assuming all what they thought, but I think in general, it's what a lot of people kind of think about. Even, you know, at times, you know, me or anybody, just without thinking, like, we assume things. So I just think it's important for people to understand that, like, you can't do that. You can't assume things
No,
about people. You have to really come at
it's
it
like
from,
such
like, their point of view.
100%. And it's like, I forget what the old adage is, but that's like the whole, you get more flies with honey than vinegar, or I don't know. I'm probably
Yes.
butchering that. But you know, the concept, like, I'm not going to, okay, this is going to be political and I'm so sorry, but this is like the only good
Bring
example I
it.
can think of at the moment.
Love
Christian nationalists are doing the wrong thing. Like, if you want somebody to love God and see God, like, you need to come at it with a perspective that's not like super intimidating. So if you want to
Mm-hmm.
educate people and bring them over to your side, you're not going to do it by being aggressive. So like that's
Mm-hmm.
also kind of the same kind of stance that I have with this person, because I've known them for so long and the role that they play in my life. Also, maybe there's a little bias as to how patient I'm being, but I'm kind of okay with that.
Yeah. No, I love that. One of our first piece that we featured on our podcast, Empathy Letter,
Oh yeah.
like brings up a lot of these themes, like speaking about just having the world needing to have more empathy, and just everyone needing to be more open-minded and more accepting of each other, but also learning new information and realizing, okay, maybe the way that I had been thinking was incorrect, or maybe because I didn't have all the information, I was making a wrong decision or wrong assumption about something because I didn't have that information. But being willing to learn and willing to open yourself up.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I was raised Catholic. So, I mean, this is the safest space possible to talk about how Christian nationalists are doing things wrong. But even not even just like nationalists, just like, I grew up so scared of everything and like had trouble sleeping because of just like the idea that like you're going to go to hell, which flies in the face of things like empathy and understanding and leading with love. It didn't feel very Jesus-y to me. So definitely left that part of my life behind. But this has been lovely. For one, thank you so much for coming on.
No,
Yes.
thank
And
you
thank you
guys
so much
so
for
much for
sharing.
having me.
Of course. And thank you so much for sharing your beautiful pieces with us. Where can people find you? Where can people find the book? When can people get the book,
Yeah.
if you're willing to share that?
Um, so TikTok is my biggest platform. It's soft baked pretzel without the E at the end. It's very noticeable. There's like a little stoned pretzel who's destroying other snacks is my picture. Same variation on Instagram. I'm not as active there, but I've been trying. I also have a YouTube channel that I'm trying to gain traction on. So YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all some variation of soft baked pretzel. Also, because I'm chubby, usually partake in plant medicine, and I like to sit with my legs crossed. So that's where that name came from. And then I will
Love
be
Love
it.
it.
publishing through Barnes and Noble, and the link to my book will be available as soon as I can. I'm actually ordering a proof now, and once I go through like the physical proof, I'll put up a pre-order. But definitely for sure, August 5th, it'll be available, and the link will be in the bio of my
Awesome.
Amazing.
TikTok.
Very awesome. Very exciting. Hopefully we'll have everything they just said linked in the description of this podcast and
100%.
video. Um,
Thank you so much for joining
yes.
us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Is Ginny still around?
Ginny is still around. Come here, baby.
Ginny get bored with us?
Hello, baby.
She's like, I don't like these people. Hi.
I know. Hello.
I turned the air conditioning off for the sake of hearing better, and she's probably just too hot, so she was laying on the floor.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we will let you go. But thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
There we have it. Hope you enjoyed it. We know we did. You can find us on all the socials, or most of them, Threads, TikTok, Instagram. You can find this podcast on YouTube as a video or anywhere else you get podcasts in audio form. Go sign up for our newsletter so you can read our author spotlights, and go find the link, which you will if you sign up for the newsletter, or go to our website to submit your work to be featured in our author spotlight. We only ask that you align with our values. We have decreased the word limit to 1,000 words. We realized 2,000 was very ambitious. 1,000 words max. It can be an excerpt from a bigger story. It can be a short story. It can be a poem. Just check us out on social to see what we're about, so that you're not talking to the wrong audience or whatever. But look, great writing is great writing. We want you to submit it. We want to read it, and we want to talk to you. So author spotlight, go follow us on all the socials, sign up for our newsletter, Buy Silly American, a book that we published this year that we're really proud of. You can find that on our website. And that's about it. So until next time, lead with Moxie.